the big problem for Apple really is, aside from all the China stuff, which we've heard an awful lot about in the past 5 minutes already, that its biggest problem is that 2/3 of its revenue is iPhone, and the premium smartphone market has basically topped out. There is no more organic growth for it to be had realistically. So it needs to find other ways to grow. And that's going to be very, very difficult.
And just specific, coming back to the smartphone market though, as you mentioned, 2/3 of their revenue comes from selling these smartphone devices, the iPhones. Back in November, they said that they were no longer going to break down individual unit sales when it comes to all of these individual smartphones. What is the best clue that investors can get from today's earnings announcement on how these sales are actually going if they're not going to break them down by units?
Well, aside from what Apple will say, probably one of the best indicators for investors to look at is actually to look at component manufacturers, what the display manufacturers are saying, what their camera manufacturers are saying, and try to get that kind of input from that direction in terms of, like, if you want to look at precise volumes. At the same side, then you can come at it from the other way, from what companies like our own do, where we provide data on what the sell-through is coming out from retailers and from distributors and operators.
Now, Apple has made a huge effort to try to shift investor focus to their services division, which is expected to be quite a high margin business, and we'll be looking for guidance around what margins we can expect today. What's the downside to switching to a business model that is more focused on services?
Well, the biggest problem for Apple is it's just a complete retooling of how the business operates. And that's probably the biggest struggle that Apple will have. The second big problem for Apple is that Apple has very much operated with a closed wall, a closed garden sort of ecosystem, where it has very much been within its own devices. Whereas if you want to have a very services-led business model, you want to have those services on as many devices as possible. So we've already seen a little bit of this shift happening. A few weeks ago in Las Vegas at CES, you had iTunes being made available on LG smart TVs for the first time, and on other manufacturers' smart TVs. So that, to me, is the first step in Apple trying to reach out, put its services on other devices, and to really try to broaden that base and make those services much more accessible to the consumer.
And another sort of bringing this conversation out a little bit and looking strategically at the year ahead, one of the big themes in tech is this move to 5G. And while this is somewhat tangential to what Apple does, what does it mean for Apple to be left out of the arguably biggest trend in tech right now?
Yeah, that could be something that towards the end of the year becomes a big issue. Apple traditionally has been a little bit slower than its counterparts in terms of adopting new technologies. It's wanted to wait until component prices drop a bit, but also when use cases became very clearly fleshed out and it could really implement a very good solution for its customers. However, when it's in a point now where competition in the market is very, very strict, it doesn't have a lot of flexibility in terms of waiting, it may feel like it's pushed to put in 5G early.
And Dana, just very quickly, we've talked about smartphones, you've talked about services. What about the wearables units? Are you expecting any good growth in that section as well?
I would hope to see growth. It's very difficult because like that, Apple has never broken out precise numbers on that so far. But it's definitely one of those areas where we expect Apple to push more into. And we would expect Apple generally over the next couple of years as well to sort of broaden its devices base, not just in wearables, but to look towards more, pushing more into smart home speakers, pushing more into other areas to really try to broaden and diversify.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.